Welcome to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast, where we talk to IT marketing leaders about how to drive more sales. Hosted by Carlos Corredor, founder of Condor, an Inc. 5000 company and one of the fastest growing IT marketing agencies in the US.
3, 2, 1, 0.
This episode is brought to you by Condor Digital Marketing Agency. Most mid-market B2B and tech services companies struggle to drive sales, overwhelmed by long sales cycles and an elusive audience. Condor helps you measure and generate qualified opportunities, make the most with your budget, and be recognized as a revenue driver and not just a cost center. You can learn more at condoragency.com. And today we want to welcome Brett Carnali. Brett has over 20 years of experience in sales and marketing, and in particular around media and technology. Currently, he's the VP of Sales and Marketing at Stone Door Group, which is a firm that specializes in modernizing the digital enterprise through DevOps and hybrid cloud services. So welcome, Brett.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Yeah, no, that was a great introduction and definitely super excited to jump right in. So
Anything I missed there?
no,
So people
no.
get to know you better. I know you, for example, I know you have a side project around music. It'd
Yeah.
be cool to hear about that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually, my wife is a recording artist, and so she has music all over Spotify and YouTube and
Wow.
the interwebs, and then we toured for 17 years all around the world, and she was the one who really who got me into music business. So it was a matter of, I was in the army and I would leave and go away on mission and stuff like that. And it was no problem at all. My wife went on a tour and I was helpless. I mean, I couldn't sleep in bed. I couldn't sleep at
Mhm.
night. I would sit on the couch and try to watch things. I'd go for drives, and so she was out about 3 months, and I was like, "That's it. I'm going with you next time." Like I'm in. I'll be your road manager. I'll be your booking agent. I'll be whatever you need, and that's how I got in. And so eventually I started a booking agency because I was very proficient at selling concerts, and so I found that I was good at that, and so I started offering it to other artists, and did that for a little while, and then handed it off to one of the partners, and then I did a record label for a little while. We recorded a few different Christmas albums and just different things for people, and realized that like I could hand that off, and so yeah, everything was kind of about touring for me until COVID. And then during COVID is when I made the jump to into tech, and it was really just a matter of necessity. People weren't booking shows anymore, they weren't going to concerts. So I had to do something else. And a friend of mine, offered me a position doing market development, and um, I built $7 million worth of pipeline in about 5 months, and they were like, "This is incredible! Like you're really good at this." But they noticed that I really got into nerdy talk, and they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, you're not a sales guy, you're a nerd, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And so they got me all certified up, and a bunch of Linux and Linux adjacent products, and then I started getting into containers, Kubernetes, stuff like that. And they made me a technical account manager. I grew those accounts, and they're like, "No, you're a sales guy. That's what you are." And so they gave me a territory, crushed my number, and then they gave me some people to manage. And they asked me to jump in with IBM as a channel partner, and kind of like build that relationship as a VAR. And so I started, closing some deals with IBM, and so they were like, "You know what? Just take North America, like all of our Red Hat business, all of our IBM business, so everything direct to end customer." So we're traditionally or historically we're an SI, right? So we're really big on services and integration, but we also have this like VAR business relationship with Red Hat and IBM automation, primarily around automation products. So the evolution from me to go from
Yeah.
being a van driver with, six musicians that, is like herding cats to now, dealing with sales reps and marketing people. It's been a fun ride.
Mm.
So,
I'm not, we'll have plenty of time to talk about, sales and marketing stuff, but I have to ask, like, well, number one, is your music still around? And is your
yeah.
wife still active and generating music? And how can we find both or either on Spotify or where?
Wow. Yeah, thanks for that plug. Yeah, I love it. So, yeah, my wife's name is Kathleen with a K, Kathleen, Carnali, Carnali. Everywhere music can be found, and she is still active. So she put out kind of an EDM single about a year and a half ago that did really well. She's performing in Manhattan Times Square next month at the end of the month, and she has a whole new record coming out sometime this year. So yeah, so
Yeah.
she makes music, she writes songs. She's a singer, songwriter kind of
Okay.
style. Her main instrument's the piano, so obviously you're gonna hear a lot of ballads and stuff like that, but she's phenomenal, and yeah, I've always been super blessed and encouraged that my wife can just create things. Like she can just I've tried to play every instrument, Carlos. Like I tried drums, I tried guitar, I tried piano. Like I just wanted to play something and it just wasn't, I couldn't do it. I don't know what it is. Like I don't have rhythm. I'm not a good dancer. I can't sing on key, and so the place for me was business. Like I can play a soundboard, I can play the radio, and I can play a spreadsheet like no one's business. So like
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you. Well, Kathleen Carnali, you said?
Yep, Kathleen
Kathleen
Carnali.
Carnali, so go ahead and after you finish this episode, it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it might be,
Absolutely.
I'm sure you can find her. But I was actually going to ask you about that, right? About it seems like, you were a natural in sales as soon as you started, right? What a lot of people try really hard and they cannot, just as you mentioned, maybe, playing instruments for you felt that way. But like, what do you think allowed you to, perform at a high level, fairly quickly? What abilities, what skills, why was it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's an age-old question for any career path, any gifting, right? Is it nature or nurture, right? That's what it really comes down to. Can I learn this or is it just a gift? And I think when it comes to sales, there's a lot you can learn. There's so much technique, you can listen to the old Zig Ziglar and you can read all the books on the shelf, like there's a lot about sales that you can learn, but there's definitely a gift. I remember someone asking me once, like, how do you do that? And I was like, what? And they were like, how do you like make them believe that you care? And it was like, gosh, I was like, I do. Like, and they were like, oh, like, and I'm like, and that level of empathy for a customer is such a crucial, like that's a thing that like I don't know. I'd like to say that you could learn, but I don't know. Some people just don't have it. They're just not empathetic. And I've always, I love Jeff Bezos talks about customer obsession, and I've always loved those two words together because there's something about when you put the needs of your customer first and you serve those without expectation of anything in return that there's something that comes in return, like so what we do at Stone Door Group is like we offer an Ask the Expert session for free. So like we give away 45 minutes of free consulting around the IT topic of choice. We specialize in cloud migrations, infrastructure, modern app modernization, those type things. So generally a lot of our customers, they take that time and they just grill our architects and our engineers, and like they're like, well, what about this? And I have these products, like how would you do them? And I love being in on those sessions because this is with big, large billion-dollar enterprise customers that I understand their problems. We have
Mhm.
customers like Red Robin and Equitrans Midstream that does like oil pipeline. We have government contractors like the Department of the Navy, like and stuff like that. Like these are customers that we all know, like they're brands that we run into or things like that. And it is so cool to hear like a bunch of really smart people come together and just start like, well, we could do this and we could do that and we could do this. And then it comes down to the end of the call and they're like, gosh, it'd be way better to do this with you guys, like, and that's where I come in. So I'm like, I'm glad you said that because let me jump in and give you a quote, like let me build a proposal. This is what it looks like to work with us on a serious level. And so I I think that customers can see genuine, like the genuine intent. They can see through authenticity, like and those things they're a big deal. And so in sales, that's half of the battle. People buy from uh people they like.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what you're buying. If you go into a car dealership and you don't like the person on the, that's handing you the keys, you're not going to buy from them. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter about price at one point. It doesn't matter about, it's like, I just don't like that guy. I just don't like her, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
People, that's a real thing. And so I take that away. I want people to like me. I always make a friend. So Carlos, after this, we're gonna be buddies. So when I'm in Miami, we're
Yeah.
getting Cubanos together, like that's what we're doing. So
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, first of all, count on that, but yeah, it's like going back to basics, right? A lot of times, then, as you mentioned, right, you can read a lot of sales books and you can know all the technical stuff and you can be either aggressive or whatever you want to be, but like if people don't like you, they're not gonna talk to you again, nor buy
yeah.
your services.
And then you still got to use the technique, right? Like, so at the end of the day, you got to have the tie downs. You got to, ask for the sale. No one's buying anything unless you offer something. So
Mhm.
there are skills and techniques that have to be implemented. You have to be able to overcome an objection because everyone
Mhm.
has one. You got to know how to negotiate. When it comes time to negotiate and where your lines are and how far you should go and when you should go there. So
Mhm.
I think all those are really important too. But it starts with genuine empathy and care and concern for
Mhm.
to meet a need or to provide a product that you believe in. And that's the
Mhm.
other thing too is so often you get sales guys who are just desperate and they need a job. I did an interview today and I'm talking to this guy and you could just hear the desperation. And so whether or not he was a good fit for us or not, I just don't like that like it's too desperate. You know what I mean? Like, why doesn't anyone else like you? Like, why won't anyone else have you? It's like, I don't know. I just don't trust that,
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
uh,
I follow. I don't know if you know Josh Brown, but he's like let's call him a LinkedIn influencer
yeah,
of sales, and I really like his philosophy, and it's a lot about he mentions a lot detaching from the outcome. I think it's the same of like when you're dating, when you go out with a girl that you like, right? If you're desperate, she smells it. It won't happen, versus
yeah,
if you are a little indifferent to that, obviously not. That doesn't mean you have to be rude or that you cannot be thoughtful and you cannot be genuinely engaged in a
right,
conversation. But ultimately, yeah, not being desperate. I think but a lot of times it's easier said than done because ultimately you do want to, like how you do want to go out. A lot of times, she perceives that, and you send her a message, she doesn't reply, but you text her again, and the same thing when you're trying. when you have a lead, right? So easier said than done, right? Any advisor on how to actually be detached from the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard because for sales guys out there, they might be thinking right now, as they're listening to this, they might be thinking, "Hey, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but at the end of the day, I have a number, and that number is over my head all day, all night. I wake up, that number is
Mhm.
up there, and I have to hit that number. And so the closer it gets to the end of quarter, the closer it gets to, those bonus markers, the more I think about that number and I can't get it out of my head. And so when I'm on these calls, how do I detach from the number? And that's one of those skills, like, that you're like, is that nature or nurture? I mean, I can give you 3 points to, detaching from that number, and I can tell you to detach from the number. And it's kind of like trying to tell someone who struggles with addiction, just stop. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, they're like, what? That's not helpful. Like the whole problem is I can't stop, right? And so yeah, so it's a similar scenario, and so it's a practice. You got to practice while you're up, practice while you're ahead. When you're at 110% of your number, it's a lot easier to get into the detachment of like, regardless of whether or not this deal closes. And sometimes it's like, you declare those things as though they are, so you speak out, I don't care. Hey, before I get on this call, regardless of if they buy or not, I'm going to provide them with the best possible service and offering
Mhm.
that I can, and
Mhm.
regardless of the outcome, and just kind of preparing your heart and mind
Mhm.
that that's going to be your attitude and that's going to be your decision.
Yeah.
And I think when you go into a call with that mentality, it definitely helps. You know, it helps.
Yes, it's a conscious effort, by you repeating yourself before and at the end and even after, hey, by detaching, I will have a better shot, right? It can be counterintuitive, and you can be tempted, you know, to attach, but yeah, you just have to gotta be strong, gotta think
You
long
got to be
term.
stronger. Yeah.
Yeah.
The takeaway, it's for some people, they overuse the takeaway in sales presentation, right? So they're like, oh, well, this probably isn't gonna, work for you, or if we can't get this done by Friday, then I can't, we're not gonna be able to do that price. Like, and these kinds of like hard takeaways, that can come really natural for some people. They love that, and then other people are like, but what if they don't? Like, what if, like, what if they can't do it till Monday? Like, we can still do the price on Monday, right? Like, we can still. And so it's being able to back up where you go, where your
Yeah.
mouth leads you. And
Yeah.
regardless of the outcome, it makes those things very powerful,
Yeah.
very powerful.
Brett, and I think that not a lot of people, I mean, I think a lot of people, especially marketing leaders, they understand the importance of aligning sales and marketing. However, not many have hands-on experience on both ends, right? So I think, um, what can you tell us, right? I think again, it comes from you that that would have a lot more meaning and yeah, uh, and trust, because you've been on both sides, right? So in terms of in general, like in sales and marketing in general, what's your philosophy? What are common mistakes? Where should we get started to make that happen or do that well?
Yeah, great question. Golly. I mean, I think when it comes down to philosophy of connecting, whether it's I would start with this. Nothing happens until there's a sale, right? And so in 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 business and in sales and in marketing and in everything, like oftentimes we can what if and kind of put out all these, this could happen, this could happen, like we're going to do this, or but if this happens, but at the end of the day, like all business revolves around a transaction, a revenue, like a sale. And so nothing happens until there's a sale. And so when you have a philosophy like that, then where does the sale begin? It becomes a question, right? Like, so what are we closing to? And so, the sales process begins when you're selling your organization to the public. So, we would call that marketing, we would call that business development, but it really is a sale because what you're essentially doing is you're propositioning like this is who we are to an end user, so that way they can make a choice or a decision to look further in, and so for me, it's like everything is a sale, and the old always be closing, what I mean? Like I'm always closing to something. And so with every conversation, every action, every intent, there's got to be a close. Every call that I'm on, there has to be next steps because activity drives sales. And so, so much of what we do at Stone Door Group is ask that question: what am I closing to? So am I closing to a meeting? Am I closing to a webinar? Am I closing to an event? Am I closing to a download? Am I closing to a visit to my website? Am I closing to a proposal? Am I closing to an engagement? Am I closing to a product? And so on and so far. And, and that list goes on and on and on. And so with every meeting, every action, every service, there has to be a close that we're closing to. And I think that's beginning with that's the philosophy, right? So like that's the overarching, like this is our philosophy to what we do in both marketing and sales, is what are we closing to, and then drawing out the whiteboard of how do we get there, what are the
Mhm.
steps, what is the process. And so I love who is it? Marcus Lamone. He says like everything is people, process, product. And this guy's like a serial entrepreneur, billionaire investor and all this. And he narrows everything down to these three, categories. And that's what success is. And so I think that ability to narrow things down and simplify is also a key element to being able to be successful in whatever the mission is, whatever your
Mhm.
objective is. And so I
And
appreciate.
when you put in things on a whiteboard, and if I what I imagine, as you were explaining this is, yeah, like so for example, even from people that don't know you, right? Like maybe they see an ad, right? Or maybe they see a video that you're promoting on YouTube, or maybe, they meet you at a conference. But that's like the first, let's say the left part of the whiteboard, right? That's like top funnel, or the very first time they hear about you. Then what, right? Then maybe it's okay, well, if you listen to this video, then I put you in a retargeting audience, in a remarketing audience, and then I want you to then probably download one of these three things that are related to the video. If you download one of these three things, maybe that means that you're ready to talk to a rep, right, about that free 45-minute consultation. And out of that, these are the three things that could come out. If you're ready, yeah, we'll send a proposal. If you're not ready, then I'm gonna follow up in 3 months, and I'm gonna maybe send you more research. That flow is what you're referring to. Depending on
Yeah.
it's one thing is to watch the video on YouTube, and the other thing is to meet you at a conference where we're talking about a particular technology. Obviously, the next steps of the whiteboard are going to be different.
Yeah, no, I find that like in large enterprises, like those top 50 brands that are on the S&P, right? Like the top 50 up there. Like those guys have gone so far into this marketing thing where like now they're a lot of their ads and their commercials and stuff, they don't even make sense anymore. Like it's literally like you get some of this messaging where it's a one word message And you're like, what does that have to do with anything? And you're like, where, like the most expensive brands in the world have some of the worst marketing. And so I love small businesses because small businesses understand they don't have that luxury of being everywhere, right? And always being in your face, having symbols that are recognizable anywhere in the world. Like they don't have that luxury. And so they have to come up with a way to deliver messaging that really connects the end user, like the end viewer, the prospect to their service or product. And you find that, and I love looking at small businesses. I love looking at franchises and seeing how they put together their initial message. Like what is it that you do? What is it that you sell? Like what is it that you're trying to communicate? Because are you connecting it with a feeling or an emotion? Are you like really ethereal like that? And you're trying to create this brand that's like super existential, and translucent in our approach? Or are you pragmatic and practical? We clean pools. Like in Florida, I love the billboards that say, "Your wife is hot. Call me if you need to fix your AC." Like it's like there it is, man. Like that's I
Yeah.
know what that guy does. You know what I mean? Like I know what that business does. I understand it. Like if I have a need, I can dial a number, like I can go to the web and I can find them. And so we got to be careful, when we're at the top of funnel place, not to get too disconnected from, what the objective is, what the actual sales is. Sometimes we can get so overexcited about our funnel. We build out this amazing funnel. And so, like, we have options regardless of what people choose. So, we start with that web, ad or whatever that, the front page of our website, or whether you're actually paying for a click or trying to get something. And we start with that. And, and then you have all these steps and options like, okay, if this, then that, and pretty soon it ends up looking like the back end of a large language model with, all these ties and webs, and it's like an absolute mess.
Mhm.
And you're like, wait, aren't we just trying to sell toilet paper? Like, aren't we just trying to sell, like, why all this, and I think in IT consulting, or whether you're doing selling business development, you're selling lead gen options and stuff like that. I think we can overcomplicate it when it's really just as simple as getting our messaging down to what exactly is the problem that we're solving to, and just putting it out there,
Mhm.
and just we fix this, we fix air conditioners,
Mhm.
and if you can come up with something clever along the way that says your wife is hot, fix your AC, then by golly, like that, people appreciate that stuff.
Mhm.
But don't get so ethereal that your message is think, and your
Yeah.
expectation is that someone's going to know that you do IT automation or that you sell hard drives.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to connect those things.
Yeah.
So
So if I, what I take from that, going back to like the alignment, between sales and marketing, is that a lot of times marketing, number one, do a lot of things without taking into account that that's not working out to have essentially sales qualified leads, right? They're
yeah,
creating some noise, and they also overcomplicate things. I'm a big fan of the keep it simple, stupid
yeah,
philosophy, you know?
right.
So is that fair to say that those are two common mistakes that marketing teams
Yeah.
fall into?
Yeah, I think we get too creative that all of a sudden we've lost, the actual focus
Mhm.
of what it is the offering is. We can create our way into something that's really good looking, and it's catching and stuff like that, but it doesn't have a message. And
Yeah,
it's hard for customers to connect with those things,
yeah,
you know? They might be impacted by those things. There's plenty of times that I've been in a museum and appreciated fine art, but there's a big difference between saying something looks great versus remembering who the artist was, and what the message was that they were trying to deliver.
Yeah, a lot of times, and it has happened to me, as the marketing leader of the agency, that I also have a vision, right? And I love researching and defining. And when I have to focus work around establishing a vision, drafting, let's say, a chart of things that we need to go after, or how does our ACP understand marketing and dividing it in four functions, and then I love that, but a lot of times then that gets in the way of the day to day, and then the team, they were driving the boat there. I'm like, hey guys, I just have this idea, this new vision, I want to share it. And they sometimes they get confused. It's like, and they're like, okay, does it mean that we're stopping the campaign that we launched yesterday, or
Right.
what do you mean? Right. So like, I wanted to ask, how do you balance out uh being thinking big in terms of a vision, but then also keeping it simple in the day to day. Again, to make sure that the teams are aligned and effective and not, confused. Um, because I think there's a natural friction or a natural challenge between the two, and it's not easy, to balance it.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, Carlos, that's you're really touching on um, a fantastic problem. If I can say those two words together,
Huh.
um, I think a lot of leaders this is such a great question. A lot of leaders are leaders because they can make decisive shifts. um w- w- it's a skill, it's a gift, it's a trait, that it divides playgrounds. You see it in kids that, the one who's like, now we're gonna play tag, like, and like he just controls the whole playground. Like all the kids just like, yeah, we want to play tag, we want to play tag. And you're like, how did he decide that instead of going down the slide, instead of, whatever the options are, the monkey bars, this, that. But there's people who do that and they stand out as leaders and it follows them throughout life, right? The challenge with that is when you are leading teams and you're visionary, you get ideas. um, which ones do you act upon when you want to have that collaborative, vibey, kind of workspace that we've all come to know and love, right? Where it's like, not cubicles anymore, but living rooms. And we're all in the certain, and we're like, hey, I got this great idea. But you start telling them about, like, we're gonna do these commercials. There's gonna be a blue gorilla. Like, I'm gonna do this thing and that thing, and like at the end of it, there's our product. And the team's like, oh yeah, or we could do this, and let's have a swing. And then like, Charlie over in the corner is like, yeah, and I think if we analyze, the audience and we dial in, like, and at the end of it, they're like, all right, so like this is what we're doing. And then you're like, nah, let's just keep going with the web, like the SEO, we're fine with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like that's like, what? What was this? But for a lot of leaders, they need that space. And so, but a lot of teams can get burnt out if that's what they're experiencing from their leader all the time. And so, how do you balance, you
Yeah.
know, having those creative sessions and those really collaborative work atmospheres without disappointing everyone because the idea doesn't go forward. So then eventually they just sit on the couch and you're like, hey, I got this idea. I want to do this pink elephant. And they end up just sitting there and they're like, yeah, he does this. And then they don't contribute anymore, and you lose and you miss out on the opportunity to really create.
Yeah.
And to your question and to your point, or how do you how do you keep your team on track with the current mission in Q2? This is where I am right now. We're doing something right now for lead gen. We have two campaigns that are running simultaneously. They're different. They're focused on different products, different methods, and it's our Q2 thing. While I, at the same time, have to get a team spun up for Q3 with what are we going to do next? Because the leads that we generate here become top of funnel for Q3 and then into Q4. But we need to do the same, we need to do something for Q3 that's going to be top of funnel for Q4 and
Mhm.
Q1. So, how do you do that? And, depending on your business, the seasons can affect the products and the types of customers that you want to attract. And so you can't be doing the same method and the same style all year long because you have different seasons. So your customers are in different places, different headspace.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm spending a lot of time and effort targeting healthcare. It's the vertical that I'm going after. But I just finished working with a lot of retail, and so retail has a big outage in Q1. So like that's when they want to do everything, and so I'm engaging and actively working with and seeking these healthcare clients, but I'm gonna want to find more retail clients so that way I can start those engagements next January,
Mhm.
and that balance is it's a challenge. So you got to be able to keep the team. If you're small, I mean, if you're large, what do? You have one team work on one thing, you have another team working on another thing, and then all you got to do is manage. So you get to manage them all. But when you're a small business, your team could be you and another guy, or
Mhm.
you and two people. And so it's just us, gang. And, and hopefully you have enough budget or you can manage some subs and some third parties and stuff like that. Bring in great consultancies and organizations that can just handle, your business development. That's ideal, and that's really one of the gifts that small businesses can leverage is that there's so many different specialized groups out there and companies out there that they do that one thing. They're focused on business development, lead generation. They're focused on creative. They're focused on SEO and web development and stuff like that, or they're focused on closing.
Mhm.
And, that's what they do.
Yeah, no, I love the one of my takeaways when I was hearing is quarterly planning. If if you think we've learned that the hard way in terms of how not to burn out the team by changing directions too often, but at the same time being flexible enough to adapt, to improve your vision and adapt to it, right? So when you do, a lot of people call it SMART goals, we call it rocks with the EOS system, right? But we've learned that okay, let's is that right now we're in April, so it's a Q2 rock, right? So
Yeah.
let's not change how we define it, and let's get it done and mark it done, right? And then we can decide we do a 2.0 version of that rock next quarter and improve it, or if it's something more visionary, then when we're discussing the rocks of Q3, are we ready to land a rock for this project in Q3, or is that still a thing for Q4 or next year, right? And you don't have to do the entire project in Q3. Maybe let's the rock can be let's research and define a phase one of a pilot project. And you don't have to do the pilot project in Q3. It's just the definition of what a pilot project could be, right? But at least you're landing visionary things into a day-to-day workflow that is not interrupting things that were already decided and for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And those quarterly rocks, those priorities, they feed the 1 year plan. and then that 1 year plan, touches the 3 year picture. And
Mhm.
so, you really build out that 10-year vision, and you have those obtainable goals so that you can hit that, reach that, and then deliver, analyze the data and then recycle again.
Brendan, any other advice in terms of, thinking big, dreaming big, and having a vision and helping the team get there?
Yeah. The most exciting thing for me, especially working in the tech space, is vision. It, it's it literally is the fun stuff is for us to imagine what something can be like, what an experience can be like, what, for us, AI is really prevalent, it's popular right now, and um, it seems like everything has AI attached to it. It's just the season that we're in, right? But what I think is so attractive to the AI movement, if I can call it that, is this idea and this notion that we can actually dream again. We can imagine what it would be like if, developing was just a matter of, hey, I'd like to have an application that does this with a widget and, can do, put out this, we put this information in and it puts out this product. People like to think of a world that's simplified and automated, and they love to dream of how things could be and how things, should be, ought to be. And I think that's where the best visions live, is they live in that world of improvement and idealism, and then we work back from that. So how,
Mhm.
that this is what it could be like. This is the big dream, the big picture. And so how do we get there? How do we get our customers there? What is going to be our differentiator in the market? What is going to be our process that drives this level of innovation so that we can realize this dream and this vision? That's the fun stuff, you
Mhm.
know. And so that's why a lot of people, a lot of your listeners, I imagine that they're going to be, entrepreneurial, and they're gonna, want to really be able to see their vision implemented. And so they get that. They get the end goal. They're looking for, like, what are the processes? What are the keys? Like, how do I get that? And it's that reverse engineering, that is the secret sauce. It's
Mhm.
can you go to, like, what would it be like just before the vision? I love the idea of robots, and so I always talk about, like a personal robot and what it could do for me. And so often, my friends and neighbors and stuff like that, they're like, "There's no way, I wouldn't want anything to, like, what could a robot do for me?" And I'm like, well, neighbor,
Mhm.
you mow your lawn every day, right? Every week, every Saturday, you're out here mowing your lawn. Wouldn't it be cool if your robot did that? And they're like, yeah, yeah, I suppose that would be cool, like da da da. And like, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if your robot, you just kind of mentioned what you wanted for dinner and it ordered the groceries, had them delivered, loaded them up into the cabinets, took out what was needed, cooked the meal, and, like, like when you start, like, really having fun with a vision or a dream, it's like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. What would I need a robot to be able to do that? What kind of hardware, like, will it have to have the dexterity of a person who cooks? Maybe, or maybe it just needs to have an arm that can grab, move this, open a can and dump it, like that's where you kind of, like, start to reverse it. All right, well, if we can get there, then we can, so what do we need to get there? We need these pieces. What kind of software, like, all those things is how we get to a vision, and what's great is that we've had so many great visionaries demonstrate it for us, that everyone with an iPhone and everyone, who drives an automobile, has encountered or gone to a fast food restaurant. Like, those are some of the greatest visionary showed us how we can do an assembly line,
Yeah.
how we can, cast the ideal of like, what if my computer was in my hand, like, and what if I could get the exact same quarter pounder with cheese no matter where I was in the country. Like that's those visions have been the birthplace of some of the greatest
Yeah.
businesses that we know.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's a great way, to end the episode on a more visionary note. Um, I would hate to end it before asking you, if we missed anything, is there anything else, that I think the audience would want to hear that you want to share?
Yeah, no, I would, the only other thing that I would add or contribute is I'm on LinkedIn and I'm always happy to engage. And so by all means, if anyone wants to reach me on there, it's Brett Carnali. I'm the only Brett Carnali on LinkedIn.
Wow, you're
It's
lucky.
rare these days that you're the
Yeah.
only one. And so yeah, I'm really happy about that. I hope no other Brett Carnalis hop on LinkedIn after this, but yeah, so reach out anytime. I'm happy to connect. And life is relationships. And so anytime I have an opportunity to build a new one, I know that I'm living. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, of course, and then the name is here on the podcast description, and we'll tag you on LinkedIn when we publish it as well. So that we'll easy to find you, even though you're the only one. But thank you, Brett, for coming.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me, Carlos. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe for future episodes. Until next time.